If you think about, we were trying to do webinars on a serious scale before, but the pushback was the people on the other end. They were still very used to, we want to come to a live event. There's something, really beautiful about being face to face. Now people are kind of seeing, once you get past the anxiety, people are getting to that place where they're like, actually, if you were going to do 3 or 4 I know for myself, if I was going to do 3 or 4 meetings on the trot in a day, it's tiring. Half an hour there, then you have to take the full hour to do your thing, and then every time there's all these travel gaps, by the time you get home after 3 or 4 meetings, you're dead.
Yep.
Now, just that ease and that lack of pressure that comes from being able to have 3 or 4, you do still feel zoomed out, but just the benefits. I think if we can get away from the anxiety and start to see some of the benefits that it's pushed on toward humanity, it's forced the acceleration of adoption of these incredible tools. You wouldn't want to be caught dead in a pandemic 100 years ago. If you wanted to be caught at any time, now's the best time ever.
Yeah, probably because of all the internet's there. Imagine the pandemic without the internet. What movies would you be watching? What research would you be doing? You'd be stuck with the books at home, and that's it. So absolutely, but it changes people's mind. It's just incredible to see how everything's changed. And to be honest with you, without the vaccine, it's kind of weird socially. The other day we had some friends in a park that we met, and at Zoo Lake, we were there and we called them, and they live close to Zoo Lake, to come over, and it was very weird because they have to keep their social distance, and this is not the way we programmed. This is not. I mean, the value of serendipitous interaction is still something that is very tangible and very true. So I don't think digital with it, but this is the largest migration into digital in the history of mankind. We've never seen this amount of people being forced to go do online video. We've never seen ISPs having to put so much infrastructure in place to deal with the capacity. We have never seen corporations pivot to a technological architecture so rapidly. I mean, every CEO that I spoke to and I continue to speak to in the last 60 to 90 days, number one priority from a tech perspective is putting in the architecture for remote work. And that architecture is not gonna go away. And that's what people don't realize, is like, this pivot is huge. It is tectonic. Because I spoke to somebody the other day on one of my podcasts, Jesper, he's the head of Okta, which is a 2-factor authentication security company in Europe, and they're quite big. And they did a study, and this study just shocked me. That 66% of all workers in Europe had never in their lives worked from home. 66% have, because for numerous reasons, they don't have the equipment, they don't have a laptop, right? They don't have an ISP connection at home that's adequate relative to working from home. And they just don't, it's not part of their mandate. So 66% in Germany and Netherlands, in the UK, so the studies across France, Germany, Netherlands, UK, 66% of the worker base had never worked from home. And now all those people are working from home. I know, that's how big this is. That's for the first time I actually saw the number. I was like, okay, I know this is big. Everyone says this is a tectonic shift for mankind, and we speak that way. But the Okta study that showed 66% of people on average had never worked from home, how now working from home is massive. That shows you how many people have suddenly gone online. And now these corporations that have deployed all of this technology for remote work, provisioned all this equipment, put people, process, and technology in with security, etc., they're not going to switch that stuff off, even if there's a vaccine tomorrow. A lot of doubters and skeptics about remote work have been shut up now. I mean, I spoke to a very large insurance company this morning, the CEO, and he said to me, we never thought we could run our call center and everything from, I mean, it's incredible. Our productivity rates have actually gone up, and everyone's working from home. So they're rethinking everything. They're rethinking their lease, they're rethinking their organizational structure, they're rethinking their hiring practices, their incentives, the definition of their roles and responsibilities, outsourcing. Now, one of the key things that we got to be careful of is, and this is what I'm trying to do in my personal capacity with these CEOs, is convincing them not to do what was done previously in an automated fashion, which means doing more with less humans. Like, this is not the time to lay people off and get a leaner organization. That's lazy thinking. Now's the time to take those people that you have in your organization and do what was previously impossible with the technological tools that you're putting in place.
That's very interesting too.
Yeah.
That's a mentality that's going to be, I love that mentality. That makes such perfect sense to me, because right now technology is enabling us to do more with less. But if you have an abundance mindset here, you don't lay the people off. The people plus technology equals huge
human machine.
Exponential. It's a human machine that you can't actually. So if you really want to kick your organization on right now, you don't scale it down. You accept the abundance and the exponential shift that comes with using more with less with technology, and then you put those people to different uses to actually grow even bigger.
Exactly. When we put the ATM into banking, we didn't lay off the tellers. I mean, the ATM was supposed to layer for everyone, and we weren't going to do anything with these people that were shoving paper through thick, glass panes. People were worried about those people's jobs, but that was like a shitty job. Like going and then watching this machine count the money and then taking the wad of cash and then shoving it through. That's a job with no dignity. When we gave the banking the ATM, we didn't lay those people off. Banks actually re-provisioned those people and gave them computers. They gave them a keyboard, a mouse, a screen, and access to information. And that human-machine symbiosis created a whole new portfolio of services in the financial services industry.
So spot on.
And that's what we need to, and so that's what I'm telling CEOs right now. Now's the time to reimagine doing what was previously impossible with this incredible latent human potential that you have now, inside and outside your business. So take these technological tools, and don't do what you did previously, because that's like the shitty jobs. That can be diminished. But those human beings, if you augment them, if you train them, if you relearn them, that's an asset to your business. To think, there's so many businesses now that can have their AWS moment. Like you're selling books, and then suddenly you go, wait a minute, I've got all this infrastructure, I've got all these people. Why don't I create like an architectural standardization model around this to allow this to be consumed externally without any human interaction? And there you've got Amazon AWS. That was what Jeff Bezos did. So every business right now has the opportunity to think in that way. Not to think, okay, I'm going to do more with less, to think I'm going to do what was previously impossible outside of my portfolio of services with all of this automation.
You and I have long spoken about this in our private conversations, which really led toward us. I wanted you to be in this interview first off the bat, because I had a base frame thinking for the fact that technology brings about abundance. I've been exposed to those Peter Diamandis' singularity, etc. But you really took it on for me, where you were trying to show me that technology doesn't just bring about abundance, it's actually going to allow people to be more human than ever. And I guess that's a perfect example that you gave there. It's a really shitty thing having to put money through a glass pane. That technology enabled that person to not have to do that job and do something exponentially more intellectual.
Absolutely. When we freed ourselves from the fields to let the machines do the shitty plowing. We used to, in the year 1900, if you had to take an audience and say who does not work in the industrial or in the agricultural sector, almost no one in the room would put up their hands, because 98% of the human population worked in agriculture, right? The machines came along, the hydraulic engine, all of those revolutions came along. We said, no, wait a minute. Kids can't work in fields at the age of 6 to 7. Child labor was a term that only came about in the late 1800s. It was a Victorian term, child labor. Before the year 1900, just not too long ago, when you were 6 to 7 years old, you worked. You worked 7 days a week. You worked 12 to 16 hours a week. You were chimney sweep in London. You were working in the mining industry. If you were a small little girl, they shoved you into mining funnels. You were weaving clothes in factories. You were smoking at the age of like 10. You're a full-blown smoker. If you take a look at labor in the year 1900, it'll shock you. But what happened was automation came along in the agricultural sector. And what happened was a bunch of farmers, not industries, not the government, a bunch of farmers in Iowa circled their wagons, metaphorically speaking, and said, this is bullshit. Our kids are not going to work in the field anymore. We're going to give them greater skills. And that's when the high school movement came along. In the year 1910, we saw the first high school, and as we know it today, was the year 1910. It was done by a bunch of farmers getting together. They taxed themselves. They created a school. And within 10 to 15 years, 70% of the addressable population that could go to high school in that age demographic in the United States went to high school. And we gave kids skills that allowed them to apply their creativity. So we freed ourselves up from the hard labor of plowing or even riding a tractor to thinking about recipes and Michelin chefs and hors d'oeuvres.